Welcome everyone to the Adversity to Advantage podcast. I'm very excited today because we've only met recently and I've roped her in to do this podcast for me. It's Suzy Bastone. She's a life coach. She's an actress. She's got a whole history in fitness and well-being. She's just a wealth of knowledge. And recently seeing her speak at an event, I was moved and I had to have her on the show. So welcome, Suzy.
Oh, thank you, Petra. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad we could arrange it. So give us a little bit of context just to, Suzy as a kid, growing up, do you feel that you had sort of resilience built into you, that you were given the tools from your parents or the education system to deal with real life?
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, in looking back, I had a brilliant childhood. My parents are two of my best friends. I've got a lovely sister. We've got a very tight family. I grew up in a lovely village down in just outside Guildford.
Nice.
So yeah, I had a lovely kind of country living upbringing. Yes, I mean, as far as resilience goes, my parents have always been so supportive and always kind of had that inbuilt, you can believe in yourself, you can do anything you choose, and they were always behind whatever myself or my sister wanted to do. It was a very happy childhood. I started dancing and singing and obviously acting as much as you can from a very young age. So I had a built-in resilience, I guess. I think that's something obviously I learnt over time, but had a confidence.
Sure.
Let's put it
and
that
a
way.
passion, it sounds like.
And a passion, yeah, absolutely. From a very young age, knowing that this is what I wanted to do. From goodness, I'm 5 years old. I think
Really?
I had other ideas along the way, but it was definitely within me to want to be a performer.
Sure. And what was it about, I don't know, being on stage or being a character? Like, what did that give you? What was that feeling like?
It was, I mean, looking back, I guess, because I still think this now, actually, it as much as it's an outlet, it was an emotional outlet, I think. Over the years, I've written a lot as well, and I find that kind of creativity was something that was, possibly I was born with, in a way of needing to express.
Yeah.
I'm a very expressive person. I'm quite extrovert in that way. So yes, it was something that I found very naturally, came naturally to me. Performing, I wasn't ever, I can't say I was never nervous on stage, but as a kid, I think I had more confidence than I possibly even do now,
Yeah.
So it was something that, was very natural for me to do.
And so talk us through that journey and just developing yourself and your career. I would imagine, not being an actress myself, but that the cycle of it can be quite, there can be lots of rejection. There can be things that maybe you don't really anticipate or get trained for when you're just like on the stage being your best self. What was that like?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, I started doing kind of competitions when I was,
Okay.
oh goodness, from a very young age. So had that sense of, you do your best, you don't always win, the rejection or however that may feel for a child. That never really seemed to bother me. It was more of a kind of a fun thing to do. It was, all the dance school I went to was all very, loving. We're all friends.
Nice.
We did it all together, so it was kind of that, do your best kind of feeling, and it was never going, oh, you have to win. It wasn't, there was definitely discipline instilled in me from a very young age for wanting to do something. Not that I was probably aware of it at the time, but I did have that want to do something really well, that want to get better. I had a most wonderful dance teacher growing up, who also had been to the college that I eventually went to.
Yeah.
So yes, she came in. I think we must have been about 11 or 12 at that point, and we've been doing it for years by that point. But she came and changed the whole dynamic of our school, and was very kind of hugely motivated. Had a great passion at what she did as a teacher. So yeah, that transformed to a lot of us, and actually a lot of us went on and did it. Um, Going back to, sorry, what you said before, like how that changed. I mean, I think the knockbacks, obviously, you know, you were used to that. You knew about the industry. You'd be told about the industry.
Right.
But it wasn't until I went to theatre college. Well, actually, I did my A levels first. I did that for a year,
Mm-hmm.
and then only through a knee injury though. So it was something that stopped me. So actually, but in hindsight, I'm glad I did that.
Yeah.
I loved education as well. I loved schooling as well. So it wasn't so bad because I knew that I had that focus. So when I was 17, I went to a lovely place called Lane Theatre Arts. It was one of the top musical theatre schools in England. It was hugely disciplined, um, and I think those 3 years. I mean, I look back and go, oh goodness, was that for me? I was always more of an actress singer than I thought I was as a dancer. But the dancing discipline there was so strong, and still is, that I'm forever grateful for having that discipline. Over those years, obviously you go through all of these different feelings, emotions,
Yeah, you're growing up, you're figuring
facing,
life out.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You're still a kid, really, and then
Yeah.
you get shoved into this kind of atmosphere, especially a theatre school. Back then as well, it was very much like these massive personalities coming in, and everyone
Trying to
wanting
outshine
to.
each other. And
Oh God, yeah,
yeah.
you've got it down
Yeah.
to a
I
T,
can picture
down
the
to a T.
stereotype of like
Yeah,
big personalities. Yeah.
yeah, it's like fame. But it, and it was something that I kind of, I thought I was prepared for in that way, I guess.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you're ever prepared for anything that you don't really know.
No.
But yes, I mean, I look back with very fond memories of there. Some of my, particularly like 3 or 4 of my best friends now, still from back then. But yes, I mean, inbuilt, you become disciplined. You have you're up every morning. You're keeping, having to keep yourself well. It wasn't like it's not really like a normal college or a university in that way, where you almost have the outlet to be a student, and you almost have that outlet to
Party, do whatever you want.
party, to let go. I mean, don't get me wrong, we did,
Right.
but it was almost you had to have this front in a way as well. You had to
Right.
have an image of a sort. Particularly there, I can only speak for obviously for that college.
And the
Uh,
self-discipline does bring through. So when I did see you speak and we met not too long ago, just the
mm,
discipline around health and around looking after yourself and that
mm,
side of things definitely shows through. Um,
mm,
so talk us through this topic of adversity. And I mean that to cover sort of anything. So sometimes we have the regular challenges of life and we tick along, and we still have the friendships or enough support networks that are good enough that can get us through things.
yeah.
What showed up for you just maybe in your adult life? Like, what does that theme kind of bring up for you?
See, adversity. I mean, that's why I love your podcast. I think it's something that is being talked about more and more, and obviously everything you do with your mental health and
Yeah.
everything you focus on in particular. I was drawn to it because of something I personally went through as well. So yes, I mean, it all started for me. I mean, I'd left college. I was, my first job was abroad, so I was, seeing the world. That's when I think my, kind of my crazy life started, as well as my discipline still for the industry, and the passion was ongoing. But I got away for a bit, and then I came back, and then I I was very happy-go-lucky. I was hugely motivated by what I did. I had my whole future ahead of me. I had that zest for life, if you like.
Yes, all filled with promise and hope.
Yeah, yeah, and I was a very positive young girl. And I got to Germany. So I got a job over in Germany, Starlight Express. So they have a massive following over there. It's still going. It's just had its 30th year anniversary, actually, which was great. I mean, obviously, I'd wanted to do this show since I was, a young kid. So I was over the moon. I went over on my, goodness, how old was I? So I just turned 22. I think it was just after my 22nd birthday. And yeah, I met my best friend flying over on the plane. He's my closest friend to this day. So we got over there, and it was obviously it wasn't my first job, but it was the first big job, something that actually could catapult my career when I came back to London, if you like.
Sure.
Something that you want on your CV. So yes, I was, living the life over there. We had, it was one of the most huge, even now, I look back and go, I don't know how I did it. It was like boot camp. You're learning, first of all, you're learning to skate. Secondly, you're learning to dance on skates, learning to sing, learning German, because it was all in German. So you had your phonetics, and it was only in 3 months. So it was like this 3-month intensive kind of boot
training.
camp. It was full on. Massively exciting. Obviously, there was lots of English, American, and Australians, mostly back then in the cast that I was with. We all get very close very quickly because of you're in it together.
Yeah.
And you have each other's backs. So I then started to enjoy myself as well. I was young. It was a big party crowd as well, if you like. You worked really, really hard. Nothing ever kind of, for me in particular, nothing would compromise the show you were doing. But it was a lot of kind of drinking. We all lived in our own place. The first time I'd ever lived by myself, so I felt very adult as well. Now, loving life. I got into a relationship with a Dutch man, actually.
Oh.
He was, I was completely in love, and he had this motorbike. So I was quite I don't know if reckless is the word or not. I used to think I was, in a way. He was very cautious and very protective as a person, as a human being, I guess. He would always look out for people. He was a carer of sorts as a personality. But I begged him. I was this 22-year-old girl. I was like, please, I want to go on the back of the bike. I want to go back on the back of the bike. And he said no for a long time. But finally, we were going to work one day, and he said, okay, here's your helmet. He strapped me in. I had all the gear, and he, drove very, very slowly actually to work, which pretty much was only a 10-minute drive. But anyway, we were on the way to work, on the way to the theatre, and we obviously ended up having this terrible, it was quite a horrific motorbike accident. And as we kind of went up the dual carriageway, a big lorry kind of pulled out, and he dipped the bike. He'd done his advanced course and everything like that, but he did happen to dip the bike. But that meant I went over the top and hit the back of my head and the whole of my body on this, on this big truck, obviously on this truck. Now I think, if I'm honest, I look back and I go, my life changed in that moment, and it still upsets me now. Actually, it's a bit weird. But yeah, it's very strange. But there's so many positives to it as well. Looking back, and
I want you to stay, if you don't mind, just stay there for a little minute. So we see you on this trajectory of success, and you're beautiful, and you've gone to this great college. What 10 minutes or that 1 minute kind of alters everything. Were you unconscious? Did you end up in hospital? What was that middle bit there?
Yeah, so I can't remember a thing about the accident. I've had a few flashbacks over the time.
Yeah.
More so nearer the time, and then I had a big gap, and then they kind of came back.
Sure.
So yes, I was, completely knocked out. um, rushed straight to hospital.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I was out of it for, I think, around about 2 weeks. And, I was very on the edge at one point. So I was very close to dying,
Wow.
which, I think took me a long time to get my head around. It was, yeah, it was a really, really tough time. But at the time, I think well, funnily enough, I mean, obviously I had my partner Ramon as well to take into consideration. Obviously, I think when I woke up, my family were all there, and I suddenly, I don't know, it was very strange. So my family had come over. Actually, two of my very close friends from back home had come over, but yeah, I'd been out of it obviously for quite a while. So they were, they were going through a lot as well, which I faced obviously post the accident, of those kind of feelings.
Sure.
But when I did wake up, I think I think I woke up and I had like obviously loads of blood still in my hair because they couldn't, move because of the head injury. And I think I just put my hand to my head and I was like, oh,
Ooh.
can someone get me some conditioner? And then they were like, oh, she's fine. She'll be fine. So yes, I mean, there was kind of, that was the break for them. I thought, they thought she's going to be fine. But yes, I mean, it's one of those situations that you don't
realize
think
the effect, do you?
No, not
For
at
like,
all.
and then you're
Yeah.
just in in recovery. So, and I'm just trying to like get into that idea of the position where you're out cold for 2 weeks, or you have limited memory. Suddenly, all concerned family are staring around you, and you think, "Oh, this is nice," but also this must mean that it's terrible. Like
Yeah,
it's almost like weird, a mix of feelings.
it is.
So,
It's surreal. I mean, it's something that, I mean, I look back and have those memories now of waking up. But I mean, to be honest, I was out of it,
yeah,
and
you're probably
and
on
the
morphine and all sorts. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, and I do remember, things, came back to me over the time. But even, you know, my partner, he had to, even when I was in the hospital, my parents always stayed for a long time. But I would have to he would take me and have a shower, and so it was very, very isolating, very kind of, after being so, or feeling like I was so independent,
and on top
and
of the
then
world, and yeah,
yeah,
your full adult
absolutely,
self needing to be
to
cared for.
yeah, to go into that kind of space. And then obviously when my parents, did leave, it was almost like I had to suddenly live with a man, and I'd never done that before, and I'd never wanted to, and I wasn't going to, because I was going to, as this independent young woman. So yes, I mean, but I I think, I mean, I'm so lucky. I mean, it was, I mean,
Sure.
that's why there's worse things could happen. That's what I had in my mind. I, kept that thought going constantly, going, how lucky I am. I'm,
To be alive.
someone's looking down, or to be alive, and okay, what are you going to do now? Okay.
Yeah, because at what point did you kind of go, fuck, my life is different? Like, actually, the trajectory I was on is either greatly slowed down or stopped, or like what was that like? How did your life change?
So my life changed initially, as I briefly mentioned. It was more the kind of like, I'm not capable of
Looking
doing
after
much for
yourself. Yeah.
myself. Yeah. Luckily, the Ramon, he was a carer. He actually cared for his mum previously. Like, she died close to, you think, a year before that time. So he was very much that. But obviously, it was the very beginning of our relationship as well. So for me to put that amount of
It's a lot.
trust in someone was very rare for me. It was a little bit unknown in that respect. So that, obviously, that changed. I tried to go with it. I was like, oh, this is okay. Okay, I'll. I think he went out and got me an exercise bike, because I was constantly going, I've got to move. I've got to move. I mean, I could barely walk across the street by myself. It was very, like, I had this thing where I, would dip my head to the left or something, and literally it would just spin and spin and spin. Lost my sense of smell, my whole sense of taste, because of the knock.
It's a head injury, yeah.
From the head injury. Those to me were minor things in the grand scheme of things, but
They're
did
still
change.
adjustments.
Still adjustments.
Yeah.
But then I mean, the biggest change came later, I think. I mean, at first I was back to what I knew. It was back to, right, I was on that exercise bike, 2 weeks out of hospital. I was just gently, but I was still, and when he wasn't in the house, I was going for it. I was really,
Trying to
well,
get back to your old
stupid.
self. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I turned up to a kickboxing class. I know. And he was actually a kickboxer at the time, and I thought, oh, well, that would be good. That's what I should do. I should go and get myself motivated. I need to get back into this.
Because those are the rules that you used to live your life by. Like, you just
Yeah,
move your body, you just show up,
yeah,
and you feel better, and that's
exactly.
your identity, really.
Yeah, exactly. And I also do believe, I mean, I went back to, so it happened on September 11th, 2002. And then I was back in the show, which is obviously a massive arena, skating around. It's like full on, you were athletes in that show. And I was back by Christmas Day. That was my goal. That was my kind of like, right, within 4 months,
Yeah,
I'm going to be on
fully
stage
recovered.
again. Yeah, I'm going to be fully recovered. I'm going to be great. So that's what I did. I mean, rightly or wrongly, that's what I knew. That's how I
Sure.
kept up my motivation, And so I was back on stage in that short amount of time. Went on for one show, came off for 4 months. I learned my lesson very
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah.
But post that, I think that was kind of something that I'd worked myself up to so much, and I then felt like I'd let myself down. That's a personal thing.
What did
Yeah.
that feel like?
That was pretty tough. Also because I'd set my own expectations very high because that's what I'd done
Yeah,
previously in my life.
yeah.
Also within our industry, and there is no blame for this on anyone. It's something that I think is possibly instilled by ourselves actually as professionals. You don't want a sick day. You don't want to be ill. You don't
Someone
want,
might get the edge on competition, right? If
well,
you're
that too, and it's almost instilled in you. Go, don't give up. Keep going, and or it's weak, or this was maybe more of a personal thing. I thought it was a weakness if I wasn't at my best, if I wasn't,
Yeah.
not just performing, but on everyday life of appearing happy, of all of that thing. So when that was my big change. Post then, I think I was alone a lot more. I wasn't around people
And as an
from
extrovert,
the
that's
show.
hard in itself.
Yeah, it definitely was. So I was only around my partner, really. Yes, my friends would come over to visit, but they had, their busy
Lives.
lives over there too. And having said this, obviously I was living in Germany, so I was away from my family, away from my friends. I couldn't fly home at that time because of the head injury. So yeah, I think I felt very isolated.
Did you
I
feel shame as well? Like, did you isolate because of that in a way?
I think I was just about. I was thinking about this yesterday, and that that memory came up of that shame, that guilt. So two different emotions there that I hadn't experienced before. The shame of slowly knowing that I was kind of going in this slight spiral
Yeah.
of to something I just didn't know. It was like this darkness, this person I didn't have a clue.
We call it a shame
Who
hole. Yeah,
yeah, was it shame
a
hole?
shame hole.
This
But
person
fueled with
yeah.
depression and all sorts of things.
Mm, yeah, this person I didn't you didn't know
You
who
can
I was.
recognize.
No, not at all, not at all.
And so you don't really
And
have the blueprint or the rules for like how to live life as that person,
no,
right?
no, it's a brand new personality, and it's one you don't want to get to know, and yet
Right. You're forced to, right?
you're forced to, and you become very comfortable with it after a while as well, which is
Ooh.
the downside.
That's the
I
because you want to
guess.
stay safe and it feels really hard to move out of it. It becomes a
Mm,
weird sort of comfort, right? To stay stuck in, I don't know,
yeah.
the dark thinking or the isolation.
Mm, yeah.
And what's interesting is I've, having met you and seen you speak and knowing about the amazing successful things that you're doing, the impact that you have in the world, it feels sort of night and day to that kind of shame hole existence. And so I'm
Yeah.
I'm really curious about, how long did it take? How dark did it get? How did you begin to put in the building blocks to create the life that you now have?
So yeah, it got pretty dark, I must say.
Yeah.
Um, my relation at the time, it had effect. It
Would have
had
felt the
lots of
strain,
effects
sure.
on that. Yeah. Also, the guilt of me feeling like I not necessarily caused the accident, but I'd been begging to go on that bike. I'd been going, come on, come on, come on. I know that my partner at the time had been through a lot beforehand himself and was probably still going through a lot emotionally.
Sure.
And I felt like I just added to it. I felt that kind of
Like
guilt.
a burden.
So on the outside, I would go, when I was finally back at work very slowly, I would walk in with this big grin on my face, this whole like, oh yeah, everything's fine, I'm alive, and making jokes even out of what had happened. But yet then going home, I think there's one kind of real down point, which I remember that come back and, in my memory of rock bottom, like you may say, or the first one maybe, was just, I think I just came home one day and obviously I was crying a lot, but I would just go, right, come on, I'd shove myself into work. That was my work and my relationship. That's what I'd be like, right, okay, I can get through this.
Pull yourself
this.
together.
It was a absolute cover up. I wasn't facing anything.
Sure.
But I remember getting home one time and I was literally got in my doorway, and obviously it was late at night after the second show finished, and I think I just literally slumped down with the lights off, and I don't even know what time I moved. Like it was, not even. I honestly don't know. The daylight may have happened. It was that kind of
just frozen,
just
darkness.
Isolated. Yeah, I isolated myself from my family, which was my absolute rock. And went into this real kind of mistrust of people as well. That was a big thing for me.
Oh.
I started to not. And in hindsight, this over the years, I've actually come to realize this was something I think my brain was opening up to.
Yeah.
Of trust in people and actually transparency in people, and why don't I trust that person? I think my intuition was growing at the same time as even when I was going through that dark place. What
did you discover?
I discovered that I had to look inwardly eventually. It was coming out in so many different ways. Obviously, I know you talk a lot about the timeline.
Yeah.
And as I've said to you previously, that certain things I don't think I faced till even 10 years later.
Sure.
And in fact, I know that. But discovering that kind of that awareness, I think, was slowly creeping in, because I suddenly had to really look at myself. I had to become calm in front of people, because actually I just wanted to explode. I just wanted to.
So it had built up so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I was angry a lot. I was really, that it was coming out a lot. And that was actually the other time that I remember, other than sitting in that, in that dark hole, was two of my girlfriends out there, who were my two best girlfriends out there. I literally lost it with them. And don't get me wrong, I was probably drinking a lot of Jack Daniels at the time as well.
Sure.
That was, that just went with an evening, and yeah, I think I just lost it with them. Like I was really angry. I was nasty. I thought I had a point, but I wasn't making any sense.
That wasn't the point. It was just the rage was exploding.
Yeah, that was the point. And I think it was their shock, their reaction to that.
So you could see a reflection of yourself in their eyes or their face and be like, fuck, what am I doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And not then soberly or in a calm way ever expressing that again, or saying why that was. Even to myself, I
processing it.
I went to a therapist out in Germany, and then at that time I would come back because I don't know, I can't remember whether I got on with the therapist or not, or I was always like, oh, this is bullshit, or whatever I
of course.
thought in my little 22-year-old head. Or I don't need this, I'm fine, or everything's my fault because my relationship is breaking down, so I've got to focus on that. I've got to make him okay. And, all my focus was going, outwardly, because anything to not really look at what was really going on.
Because that's scary and you might not even know how to do it. But the trust thing, was
Mm.
that because, like, where did that come from, if you've ever discovered it? Was it because you couldn't trust yourself because you'd put yourself in that situation? Was it the relation? Like, what was the trust thing? Like, how did that show
I
up?
think there was three things, if I'm honest. To compartmentalize it, really, if I'm going to, it one, yes, trust with myself, probably,
Sure,
of my own, and this has happened later in my life in different ways as well,
sure.
in different circumstances. But yeah, trust in myself and my own behavior,
Yeah,
wanting to keep that kind of, yeah, everything's fine,
yeah.
yet
Perfection. Yeah,
perfection, yeah, not wanting to break down, not wanting to show vulnerability,
yeah.
not wanting to upset other people through doing that either, especially possibly my family, that would fall under that category. Not, that they would be the most understanding people, yet I was
But that's
shutting
the
them out
story you're
because,
telling yourself because you don't want
yeah,
anyone to see what's really going on.
yeah, especially as they couldn't be there on hand at that time as well. They couldn't just be right there. Secondly, trust in relationships. There was obviously something going on in the relationship at the time. There was other things that were happening that, within that relationship, that my trust levels like plummeted. I hadn't known anything like it, and yeah, I started to question a lot, which I'd always had, or I'd felt beforehand. I'd always had very, very secure relationships. Whether they were right or wrong, they were friendships. They're very, very secure. So that broke me a
Mm,
lot, I think, as well. So my trust issues, um, wavered then. Then thirdly, being in the industry I'm in, and again, there's no blame on anyone on this. It's
sure.
it's it's something that I found out very quickly, who my friends were, which is
Oh,
great in one
that's
respect,
super
great.
shitty in another way.
Yeah, really shitty, and again, it's no one's fault. It's something that possibly, not blaming myself for everything, but in a way, I wasn't opening up to
You
people.
push
So
people
how
away.
how could
Sure.
I expect that back on one hand? But on another hand, I don't know, maybe because I had isolated myself. I kind of took this bird's eye view eventually, um, and was quieter. So actually, I was listening more, and I wasn't wanting to get involved in the drama that was going on. And I'm talking about the internet. This is even post leaving Germany. Next time I was in a job, I was just very, very cautious. It was, I was always thinking, I still think this sometimes, but I think I've got a hold on this really well now, that, I always wondered whether it was paranoia or intuition, whether, with the trust,
Sure.
with trusting people, in general, or but yes, that was very much, I found out who I could open up to, or who I trusted. Not saying that people
And
weren't trustworthy.
sure.
It was more the, I just wanted to cut the bullshit, if I'm honest. I think
Yeah.
from that age, from that moment, I have no time for lies. I have no time for arrogance. I have no time for, drama.
Did you get that
Yeah.
perspective, like, for people who have a near death kind of experience of, life is short, don't take it for granted, no bullshit. I don't know if you were at the beginning grabbing it in the same way that you are now, but that sense of, like, fuck, is this how we live our lives? Like, I don't know, a switch of
Yeah.
perspective somehow slowly.
Absolutely. I think it was a definite switch. I mean, to be honest, initially I was so like that, but I think that was also covering a lot up, like I
Sure.
said. But yes, after a while, I think, yeah, when things happen to you in life, and then whatever else happens, you kind of, you go there, you realize what's actually important. You realize what you want instead if you're in a place. Um, and yeah, you want, yeah, it's the bullshit that I still to this day cannot, I
Abide
don't
by.
handle very well.
Yes,
Yeah,
no, and that's why I appreciate your authenticity and your vulnerability. That we do the no
yeah,
bullshit conversation here.
yeah.
And so, talk me through finding your, so I know the acting still was still part of your life, but it obviously switched a little bit because you had different elements of your career sort of show up. What was it
Mm,
like, just that journey of self discovery with this new perspective? I mean, my imagination says it wasn't fucking easy to kind of group and figure out, how do I matter? What's my purpose? I don't, all that sort of stuff. Like, what
Mm,
were the next sort of 10 years like of self-awareness and figuring out how do I spend my life now?
mm. The next 10 years have been very interesting, very interesting. And I mean, I'm at a really good place now,
Yeah,
in many ways. Um, Still constantly work on myself, work on things that I did put into place, very gently over the years. So when I left Germany, I actually, instead of going to therapy, I was doing therapy for a little bit. I actually went to do NLP, so the neuro linguistic programming.
sure.
I started reading a lot about this. I obviously, by this point, had figured out I've got some type of anxiety or depression, that is affecting my life and those that I care about.
Sure.
Um, so yes, I did a lot of reading. I mean, I always loved to read, but it was something that I was so like, wow, this is going to help. It was not
Yeah.
just the self help books, but all of
Trying to
anything that
understand
yeah, trying to yeah, I
the
really wanted to
post-traumatic stress, everything.
yeah, absolutely. And depression, how the brain works, like the neuroplasticity of the brain, how I'm actually responsible for that as well. And I can be responsible, which was a massive change for me. It was when I went, oh, I don't feel so out of control. I can control this if I want to. At the stage I was,
Sure.
when
There's
I
things you
kind
can
of
put in place to
yeah,
help.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely. And I think that was a massive opening up of my mind, educating myself in many ways, but also uh, opening up my voice again, I guess. I mean, there was even 5 years, 10, throughout those 10 years, there were times that I would face, I say traumatic experiences, um, certain things that
Yeah.
happened to me later on in my career, even or relationships, um, that I would just go mute. I couldn't string a sentence together. I would. Yeah, I'd
Freeze.
be free, absolutely
Yeah.
freeze. My mind would just be so, flying around, boggled. I couldn't string a sentence together because my emotions were so high, that I
It
couldn't get my
floods you,
thinking
right?
brain.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Overwhelms.
yeah, totally overwhelming, and it's when I felt either under attack, by certain people in my life, or there was a certain situation that actually happened again in a theatre job when I got back to London. I had a wonderful run in the West End in certain shows. Actually, only goodness 8 years ago, I was 9 years ago now. I was in my last theatre show, my last musical theatre. I do more film, and hopefully TV
Yeah.
now, as an actress. But I'd gotten this great show and it was fabulous. We had a amazing cast. I thought my trust levels were, I hadn't even thought about them
Yeah.
really.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was kind of,
It's
oh,
a
that's all
non-issue.
behind me.
Yeah.
Non-issue. Something happened there again. I was actually filmed in the shower, which
This
was
isn't an
with
acting situation. This is
yeah, I was in
like an
the
invasion of privacy.
invasion of privacy. It was backstage. Um, I haven't ever spoken about this, and I think I'd like to at some point. I think
Yeah.
it's definitely relevant to the world we live in now, and obviously what has been spoken about over the last 2 years
Right.
in that particular industry. But putting, my again, my trust levels flared up. I mean, who are my friends? Who aren't my friends? Who actually turned away from that and did not support me, and who did? Who was right by my side?
Wow.
What my I actually learned my resilience at that point. I learned actually how calm I can be, and
Okay.
how more powerful that was,
Yeah.
rather than acting out the way I may have done 5-10 years previously.
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of I've gone off on one now. I've lost my track of
That's
which
that's all right.
questions
That's
on.
all right. So, well, I gave you a loaded question going, tell me about the
Oh,
last 10 years.
oh yes,
So just
right.
the bumps along the way, and like, and
Yeah.
I'm interested in, you said you learned a couple things that you began putting into place. Like,
Mm.
what were the practical things that you started putting into place, whatever that might have looked like, to look after your body, but your mind, to help heal you?
Right. So it was again, reading a lot. Like I was saying, it was like educating myself
Educating. Yeah.
about it. I found meditation quite early. Well,
Okay.
early as in, I know
On that journey.
it's thrown around everywhere now in a great way, and I'm so glad it is. But I found that NLP. For me, that was something that worked because I wanted to. I had to go inward. That was a necessity for me, and I knew it. Also, relationships that I had at the time, that it was it could have been the death of them if I didn't sort myself out. It was something I had to go, right, come on,
Yeah.
this is something what do I want? What do I really want? How do I really want to live? Because this isn't going to kick it for the next 20 odd years. For me, it was finding a balance.
Hmm.
With exercise. I mean, I know I briefly mentioned about the exercise earlier. Um, Something for me that was ongoing. Obviously, I had to, physically when I couldn't, I learned to balance that.
Sure.
But then when that was all back, that's been something that has, I think, carried me through my whole life. Personally, obviously, it works for some people more than
Different.
others.
Yeah, but I'm seeing
Mm,
that as much as I'm a mental health professional,
mm,
running my own business for the last 7 months and realizing the stress levels, and there's literally nothing like exercise to
mm,
just burn off some of that adrenaline and to allow me to stay focused. So like, I'm learning so much more about the mind. I know people know this, but the mind body connection is so
yeah,
real as far as how the symptoms that we get physically when we've had mental distress, and then the opposite as well. So you had physical distress and it
mm,
led to kind of mental, and so looking
yeah,
after one can look after the other. But then, of
yeah.
course, I love the word balance. We're all chasing that, aren't we?
I know we are. We are. Balance, mindfulness. I
Yeah.
love it. But it's true. It's that kind of that parallel. I mean, the mind body connection. I mean, again, I think I'd felt that, whether it was conscious or unconsciously from a very young age. Obviously, growing up as a dancer or an athlete, whatever,
Mm,
you get to find that connection. Your physicality is everything connected to how you feel, affects your physicality.
absolutely.
So very, very much something I knew, something I was comfortable with as well, because if I don't move my body on a daily basis, I'm like, who am I?
You
So it was
feel it. Yeah.
something that was very natural to me. But along the way, I felt that really was what kept me going. I mean, it was something that I became quite routine about things, which helped me at the time. I needed that routine. I felt that was hugely beneficial. Keeping obviously all that adrenaline going outside of the workplace, something just for me, something to keep myself
And it's that sense
balanced.
of doing what is in your control so
Yeah.
that the stuff that isn't in your control is less overwhelming, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember when I first met you, when I
Event.
was
Yeah.
speaking, yeah, and I do remember. I think it kind of came out of anyway, because it wasn't in my notes to say, but it was. I said I do have a control,
I may have
and
heard that.
sometimes it's an issue at
Yes.
times. I still call it an issue, but now I kind of go, no, actually, that's my thing. I have my non-negotiables. I have my that keeps me going. I go, right, okay, what's non-negotiable in my life? Non-negotiable, right? Okay, great. I'm going to do this, and if I don't do that, this will happen. What do I really want from this? All those wants and whys of what keeps you going. Um, uh, so yes, I mean, I've been quite extreme in my life with exercise as well. I do feel I've been the person to go to an extreme to actually find the balance to bring it back
Sure.
anyway.
We have to
So
test it out,
yes.
don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, meditation, I mean, exercise, the whole well-being. I rarely, if ever now, make any excuses for it either. I used to go, oh yeah, well I work out this much, or people used to ask me how much I used to do things. I go, oh, and I used to actually, again, probably feel a bit ashamed of that, like it was something that was just for physicality or image rather than my mind. I mean, I
Yeah.
run for meditation. I run to
Yeah.
be in the fresh air. I run to
It
get
ticks
away.
so many boxes. Yeah. Yeah. Find
Yeah,
peace.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's all. As we've spoken about before, that's subjective to the individual. It's all it's finding what you need as a person, but saying yes, I need it, and not feeling like it's um, self-indulgent, I guess.
Yeah.
It's
Self
a
care is not
love.
self indulgent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's like this self-acceptance, this self-love, which again is everywhere now. But there is some such truth to it that I will forever be an advocate for that.
Love it. Love it so much.
Another thing was just
Yeah. Go ahead.
it was just paying attention. I think that was the massive thing for me. I mean, obviously, as we've said, mindfulness gets thrown around in the wellness industry, the yoga industry, which obviously is another big thing to me, is my yoga practice. It gets thrown around so much that I'm not even sure people really know what it is sometimes, if they're not really focused in it or read about it. But it's, as we know, it's purely, it's simply put, it's paying attention. So whether that's to yourself, to your breathing, to your behavior, your actions, to other people's behavior, how you make people feel, how they make you feel, whatever it may be, I started to pay attention, and
Which is,
that changed it for me.
and this may sound like a weird question, but do you, given all that weirdly the accident has given you as far as the character that you've built and the impact that you're having,
Mm.
like, do you wish that it didn't happen? Would you do things over? Do you know what I mean? That weird question of
Mm.
like, do you wish the
No,
pain, but do you know what I mean?
I love that question, and I have been asked that before, and I mean, I even thought that myself, and I've gone, do you know what? I don't think I'd change a thing, because I mean, like I've heard you say before, and and I love this about your story and your openness, which can only drive more people to do that. Um, no, I wouldn't change it, because this is who I am now.
Yeah.
This is what was leading me up to it. I mean, there's so many positives from adversity and challenges. I love a challenge. Don't get me wrong. I don't want that particular one again.
Well,
But
no.
who does? But I try and keep myself safe. But it's something that I will forever be instilled in me, of going, you know what, you can cope. Something else is going to come up. You can cope. You can get through this. You can now open your voice. You can now help people, which was a massive thing for me,
Huge.
to want to do, obviously, with my coaching and working with actors. I work with a few actors, directors, students I've worked with, which has been lovely, actually, going back to that
Early
age where it
days.
all
Yeah.
starts, and also, with people, wanting to start business, or wanting motivation, and that kind of that motivation behind them to want to change their lives in a certain
Yeah, and
way.
I imagine you couldn't have had the rich impact in the sense of the self-discipline and the work ethic, but equally
Hmm.
understanding that adversity can punch us in the face and put us back a few steps or miles,
Yeah,
and that how hard, like, you have the empathy for how hard that journey can be to regroup and
yeah,
recreate. And also you've had the live, learning around experimenting with balance and with tools and techniques, and being
yeah,
present is such a profound one in our rushed day-to-day society of achievement
yeah.
and of technology, right?
Hmm.
To just actually sit and be here in this conversation. I appreciate you so much. Just being present with me, and I feel really present with your story and the impact that it can have in the world. If people want to connect with you in any way on your social media, or where can they find you?
I'm on Instagram a lot,
Okay,
but any social media like Instagram, I love pictures, I love quotes, so that's very much my platform. But Facebook, Twitter,
lovely.
But yes, so my feel free to email me as well if they wanted to. That's just Suzy Bastone 16 at gmail.com.
At gmail.com. Yes, Hotmail was a while
Yeah.
ago. We'll
That
add.
was all good.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
showing your age.
Oh, I know. Damn it.
We almost got there without that happening. Damn. I'll add all of that into the show notes so people can connect you. And until then, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely. Thank you, Petra.